Hi there, welcome back to Power of as part of this, every Wednesday we're reading a kid's book at noon, and every Friday we're reading from one of our nonfiction or fiction adult books. And today we are continuing to read from What Goes Unseen and Other Tales from Afar by Sean Minster. It's a collection of short stories. Some of them are a little bit spooky, some of them are a little bit thoughtful, some of them are a little bit dark. There's a wide variety in here. It's a great read. And we're doing Power of Storytime to try and bring a little bit of creativity and normality and community to all the craziness that's going on right now. So if you do want to support it, we'd love for you to check out our books. You can go to calling-card-books.com/read-now to check out the first few chapters of all of the books. Or if you'd like to purchase some of them to help support us and support the authors, the printers, or if you want to purchase it through your local indie bookstore, it helps support us all through this time. So you can visit calling-card-books.com/shop to do that. And today we're going to finish reading The Hodag Hunt, and we are lucky enough to have author Sean Minster with us now. We tried to get him to do a video call-in, but we're having some technical troubles with that. So thanks for coming on, Sean. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and
definitely fun to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. You're so full of wonderful stories. And I was just wondering, how did you start writing short stories? How did you get into that?
Well, I don't know. I've always been a fan of telling stories, so I guess it would have been these ones anyway. When I moved out to Sacramento from Wisconsin, I was riding the trains from job A to job B, and occasionally I'd miss a train, and that meant I'd have to wait for a half an hour sometimes to catch the next one. So instead of just being my thumbs, I thought, maybe I'll make up a story to entertain myself and jot it down. And then just kept going with it. It was fun, so wrote a little more, revised it, edited it, and eventually it turned into something.
That's great. Capturing a little bit of daydreaming. Nice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest inspiration for the stories in this book?
It depends on the story, I suppose. So the one we're reading today, The Great Hodag Hunt, is definitely inspired by my childhood growing up in Wisconsin. I'm more from the southern side of the state, but I definitely know the north side, and that loved the forest, loved just being a kid running around playing with stick swords and fighting ninja trees or whatever's out there, and just making up a story with my friends or my sisters about who else is in the forest or what we got to do to save the day. So it was in that same inspired genre of just childhood make-believe. Never did fight a Hodag as a kid or find one, catch one, but good Wisconsin lore, so I think it was worth the story.
Worth penning. Yeah, it seems like you have no shortage of imagination, that's for sure. Yeah. Now, when did you...
That's way to pass the time.
Yeah. When did you first think of putting all these stories into a book?
I couldn't put a definite time on it, but I started writing one story, and I kind of finished that one up, and then another story came about, and got halfway through that and started a third one, and it just eventually kind of started a collection of them, and I thought, but at some point in there, I got the idea I wanted to write a book. But I realized it's a massive undertaking, and hadn't really written any big stories like that, so I got so far in that, oh my god, this will never happen. Just too much. But the short stories kept coming along. So after I got a few of those done, I'm like, maybe I can go this route. Get a collection of these together. Something a little quicker, a little more fun to read piece by piece. So I went the short story route. But we'll definitely be revisiting the novel end of things.
Yeah, now that you got a little bit of practice. Is one of the short stories your favorite, or is it like your children, you can't choose which one you like the most?
I suppose it depends on, it's like, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite music? It's the mood of the day,
Yeah.
you know? If I'm feeling childish and fun, then it'd definitely be a Hodag hunt. If it's more grandiose and philosophical, then a deity's daydream would be to go. I like that one because it gets your head ticking and
it's very cerebral.
The other end of the universe.
Yeah, you get quite the variety in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, have you ever gone on any real life Hodag hunts, or like what's your best memory that's kind of in the vein of the Hodag?
Okay, well, I guess to a Hodag hunt would be in high school. We'd go ghost hunting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there's plenty of local legends in Wisconsin of haunted TB hospitals that basically turned into torture chambers, supposedly, or cursed buildings that burnt down.
Oh, wow.
Lighthouses that have, their child died, and now you can still, you walk on this bridge and cross your eyes, you can see the floating form of the poor child still there. So that was
very
a fun way to pass the time.
Yeah, Hodag, but for adults, kind of.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, and then the artwork in the book is done by your sister Rosie. How did you feel about having the book kind of be a family affair?
I mean, I was all for it. It's what I chose to do, obviously. So, I mean, she's I've always known her to be a great artist. So I just asked her, I said, I've written these stories. Would you read them and then just draw whatever comes to mind, basically capture whatever you feel is the essence of each story in cover art? And I think she did a great job. My only regret is that the paperbacks can't be printed in full color because they look so good.
They are really captivating. Yeah, and people are where they are in full color.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all can be viewed on minsterbooks.com. Just if you just wanna look at it on a computer screen or order one for yourself, they're definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, we've got the Hodag sitting with us right now.
Nice, perfect.
All right. Well, did you want to read a little bit from the Hodag? We left off with the kids meeting Squirrel Monkey Boy. And they're about to get into all sorts of other shenanigans.
Sure, yeah. I'll do some popcorn reading here. I will say before I start off, I have a terrible Russian accent, and we'll see if I attempt how fully I jump into this.
It can't be any worse than my attempt at a Russian accent. It kept getting weaker and weaker the longer I read.
I'm gonna say the same goes for the kids' voices, but we'll jump in. We'll see how she goes.
All right.
Great Hodag hunt. Here we go. A bit of zigzagging later, the group came to a small clearing in the trees. Bordered on one side by a fallen pine, the camp set a fire pit, and at the far side sat a caravan the size of a small boxcar. There were no discernible signs of how the caravan managed to end up this deep in the woods, and they weren't quite sure if it was something they should ask about. Here we are, home sweet home. I will let my friends introduce themselves to you. Friends, hollered Squirrel Monkey Boy. Come, we have company. They are our guests, so be nice. There was a shuffling amongst the kids. A few moments later, a keen-sighted, muscly woman stepped out from behind the caravan. Her arms and legs were wrapped in strange ribbons, and her hair was tied into a militant-looking braid. Hello? She said, testily, and assured her. We were of the circus. Besides, they're only children, and only here for lunch. Very well, she begrudgingly agreed. I am asked for axe and knife. Will you show us? Derek pressed. Yet. First, the other introduction. There are four of us too. I see, said Derek. Well, I am Derek, he offered. Emotion caught Sam's eye, and she peered over before the rest gave notice. And I am Yuri, came a deep, bellowing voice from the far side of the caravan. Pyrotechnics specialist. The man who approached was a burly and broad with a slightly crazed look of amusement permanently worn on his face. There were singes spattered across his skin and far less hair on his arms than you would have otherwise guessed. He approached the group with a cocky stroll. Pyro what? Mikey asked confusedly. Pyrotechnics. I am master of fire. I juggle it and eat it. I could sleep in fire if needs to be. Oh, cool, Mikey smiled. And I am Babushka, came a voice from high in the trees, causing eyes to dart upwards. Seconds later, a figure dropped gracefully to the ground, seemingly out of nowhere. She was far older than the rest, widest and strongest, with her hair tied in a tight, unmoving bun. I am trapeze artist, Babushka went on. Also, I am group chef. Nice to meet you, Mikey replied. I'm Mikey. That's Jenna. You've already met Derek, and, she's Sam. Very nice to meet you all, Babushka answered in a stern tone. Now can we see all your powers? Mikey asked excitedly. Fine, Babushka answered curtly. But it is lunchtime, so we must eat our meal cooked soon. Pyroman, she yelled, looking to Yuri. Use some of your magic to get a cooking fire going. But use that fire pit this time, or you burn the whole forest to ground. It's too wet to burn the ground, he grumbled back. But okay, fine. He made his way to the rock circle and started straightening it out. This will take a minute. Like I said, too wet. And he shot a glare at Babushka. Meantime, I show you my skills, Svetlana interrupted, directing the kid's attention elsewhere. This spot is it. Now, watch and be amazed. The first thing she did was produce an axe from her shirt sleeve and throw it at the fallen tree's dead stump. To the children's honest amazement, it stuck in the wood. This was followed up by a knife thrown, and then another quickly after. It was hard to say where they landed exactly until Jenna walked up to inspect the tree. The knives were so closely nestled up to the axe blade you couldn't fit a piece of paper between them. Ooh, can I try? Jenna asked, almost not waiting for the answer to reach for the knives. Okay, sure, came the thoughtful response. But do not break my instrument. They are precious to my craft. Of course, she said, running back with the knives and axe. First, Babushka stopped Jenna. I must exhibit my discipline. Then, while I cook, you may play with your knives. Oh, right. Yeah, go for it. Babushka ran forward, cartwheeled, flipped, then jumped up on a tightrope strung between two thick trees. The kids hadn't noticed it until now. Once in her element, the performer walked forward, backward, spun, and even dared to walk on her hands. Jenna seemed a little worried for the performer, but Derek and Mikey cheered on the fearless acrobat. While she was upside down, Mikey caught sight of what appeared to be a skull tattoo on Babushka's thigh beneath her armpit. He shared this observation with Derek and Jenna, who nodded in agreement. At last, Babushka dismounted, landing with such elegance you'd think she was placed down by some giant, unseen, gentle hand. And what is your talent? And what's your talent? Sam asked Squirrel Monkey Boy curiously. I am more of oddities than anything else, he answered sheepishly. But I do climb trees very well. Here, look. With that, he galloped on all fours to the nearest tree, scampering up without the slightest hesitation, and climbed to the very top where the thinning branches shouldn't have been able to hold his weight anymore. Then he turned around till his head faced the ground and scampered back to the ground. Here we go, Yuri exclaimed. Watch now. Everyone's gaze was now directed to Yuri, who stood with his arms crossed. He pulled up one hand that ignited with a snap of the finger. Then the other caught fire as well. He tossed the fireballs about in a confusing pattern before hurtling them into the fire pit with some unseen force. The whole thing exploded into a glorious blaze, sending crackles and sparks into the air. There you have it, Yuri declared triumphantly. Now, what is on the menu for this lunch this day? Borscht, Babushka answered matter-of-factly. What's that, Mikey asked. A Russian stew of the beet. We've got tomatoes, Mikey offered excitedly. Perfect, Babushka replied with almost a smile. We will combine ingredients and make enough for all. Babushka's borscht bubbled in thick harmony with the soft crackling fire. Mikey's eyes were transfixed on his spectacle, and he was taken in by the harsh smell which promised him a hatch belly. A sharp metal clash followed by a shriek of joy pulling up his gaze. Apparently, Jenna was getting more accurate with the knife. Yuri sat next to Mikey, belling the occasional burst of flame. Mostly he smacked his lip, constantly trying to remove the layer of peanut butter from the roof of his mouth. They all shared a humble meal of PB&Js and borscht. Then Derek announced that he had to go to the bathroom. He made roughly for the direction of the caravan when Babushka yelled out, "Do not go by the caravan." He turned to her, confused, off-put, and just a little bit concerned. There is no bathroom in there, and we don't want to go somewhere else, she finished, wearing a painted-on smile. Derek steered clear of the caravan and came back a few minutes later, the conversation. We never asked, Svetla began. What is it that brought you to this side of the forest? There are answered on behalf of the children. For a Hodag. The Russians shifted nervously, glances, but quickly gained their composure. Have you seen one? Svetla asked, trying not to seem too interested. Derek replied tentatively. We were kind of about ready to give up on that. Mikey shot him a questioning look, then chimed in, Yeah, we've been looking forever now. I don't think we'll ever find one. Besides, we should probably start heading home soon. From the beaten path, you know? And Svetla replied with some consideration. This is true. You must have some long walkings to do still. Yeah, Derek agreed, thinking it was about time they made their exit. It's getting to be... He trailed off as a mumbled up. At first, he was going to ignore it, but as everyone seemed to notice, he couldn't help but ask, Wasn't that? Mechanical issues, Babushka explained without pause. We can help, Mikey offered, and swiftly got an elbow to the side from his brother. No, it's no trouble, Svetla assured them. This is easy, thank you. Okay, well, I think we're going to be going now, Derek announced as nonchalantly as he could muster. Yeah, but thank you for the meal, Mikey added, and the tricks. Was our pleasure, Babushka replied. Goodbye to you. Bye, they sang in a cheery chorus, collecting their things to hastily be on their way. Just as they were leaving the performers, another grumble sounded out from the caravan. This time the noise was more distinct, throaty and guttural, and definitely not anything mechanical. They aimed not to look back and practically ran in. When they were sufficiently far from the Russians, and fairly certain they weren't followed, the kids circled up. That was weird, right? Jenna started off. Yeah, really weird, Derek agreed. And you heard that growl from the caravan. What else could it have been? A lion? Mikey offered. More like a Komodo dragon, Sam threw in. Did you hear the hissing undertone? Whatever it wasn't an engine, Jenna said with certainty. It has to be a Hodag. The air of excitement was building within the group. But before it grew too big, Sam shared a thought. They are circus people, so really there's a decent chance of any exotic creature being in there. She was met with exasperated stares from everyone else, so she corrected. But realistically, it has to be a Hodag. They were all so sketched out just at the mention of the thing. Exactly, Jenna continued. And as inviting as they all were, I don't think the Hodag is in the right hands. You'll end up a cheap sideshow. Probably starve to death before they even make it to the Twin Cities. We have to rescue it. But how, Sam wondered. It's not like we can put a leash on the thing and walk off with it. I've got an idea, Derek stated, with a plan formulating behind his distant gaze. They huddled closer at this, and Derek hashed out the details. I'm going to say popcorn to Kate.
All right. So I'll continue the reading. After about 20 minutes of preparation, everything was all set to go. All they had to do now was not mess up and hope for the best. Everyone took a lemon from Jenna's pack, just in case. That probably wasn't enough to kill a full-grown Hodag, but it might act as a deterrent long enough to escape if one of them got cornered. Jenna was first on the scene. They all practiced Hodag growls, and hers was the best, so she got into position on the far side of the Russians' camp. From there, she could just barely see the performers, but was sure to be out of their sight. After waiting a few extra minutes, she began her cry, low and subtle at first. After another minute, she called again, trying her best to sound like a Hodag calling out for its lost mate. The second set of calls were a little more distressed than the first, spot on as far as anyone could guess. Apparently, the Russians had taken the bait. Jenna watched as they pulled up nets, spears, and some equipment out from underneath the caravan. She didn't wait around, stealthily making her way further into the woods and away from the direction they had entered. She called again, and when she'd made it about 50 yards further, then again after another 50 yards. Sam, Derek, and Mikey watched from the opposite side of the camp. They couldn't see Jenna, but they heard her call clearly enough. Then a second call. Then fainter calls. By that time, the Russians were on the move. Yuri, Svetla, and Squirrel Monkey Boy stalked off into the woods, while Babushka stayed behind, keeping watch from atop her tightrope. They resisted charging in and instead gave Jenna a chance to lure the others away. When they decided the time was right, Mikey and Sam flanked either side of the camp. Sam ignited a distraction first, a smoke bomb constructed mostly of leaves, moss, and toilet paper. It was quick to ignite thanks to an added layer of bug spray. She tossed the smoker close to the camp, then left, watching from afar as it billowed and grew. Babushka didn't notice until it was fully fuming. She started cursing Yuri under her breath as she went. Soon as she began to move, Mikey deployed his smoke bomb on the opposite side of the camp, while Derek skirted the perimeter towards the mysterious caravan. Babushka was now very suspicious, but the smoke was starting to cover up her line of sight. Derek snuck up to the caravan. He couldn't see in, so he tried the obvious thing. Of course, it was locked, so he quickly moved on to Plan B, dynamite. It wasn't true dynamite, but as close as they could manage in a pinch. They cut off all the match heads they had, doused them in bug spray, wrapped them in toilet paper, doused that in bug spray, and wrapped the whole thing together in even more toilet paper, which is not something you can do right now. He placed the bundle right up by the latch, took out the remainder of the bug spray can, a stick wrapped in toilet paper on one end, and the final book of matches. He lit the wand attached to the stick with a match, then held it at arm's length between him and the dynamite. After a deep breath, he pressed down on the spray nozzle, sending a mist of flammable fluid through the flame and onto the burnable bundle beyond. After lathering the explosive in fire, he stepped back and admired it. At first, the thing just burned, but after a few seconds, it erupted into flame. It wasn't the bang he had hoped for, and cool as it was, he began to lose hope in their plan. Just as the caravan started to shake, then lurch, A loud thump sounded on the wall opposite the flaming door. Then another. After several moments of banging and shaking, it seemed the Hodag tried ramming the door itself, because in one great knock, it nearly tore through the weakened latch. That was Derek's cue. He disappeared into the forest and waited. The caravan continued to jump, stretching on for what felt like hours. Babushka had taken note by now and was approaching cautiously but angrily. The fire bundle slipped from its perch along with the chunk of a frail, cindery strip of wood was now the only thing bracing the door shut. Babushka froze, seemingly at a loss for what to do next. Then came the final blow. The door burst open in a shower of ash and ember. Babushka fell backwards with a shriek, scrambling between her and the caravan. Out of the smoky entrance, a dark creature leaped onto the scene, wild in its movements. Babushka rolled and stumbled to her feet in a mad panic. She ran to the edge of the camp near Sam, but paid her no attention. With the final the Hodag shrouded in smoke. It called out, but unlike any of the sounds it had made before this yell, it was confident and furious. Its roar like an angry bear growl made up of crocodile hisses. The sound was foreign, yet seemed to sum up the creature perfectly. Sam thought she now understood how dinosaurs really sounded. Then the Hodag made a dash for Babushka. It moved at an awkward yet effective gallop, its movements lying somewhere between that of a wolverine and a lizard. This sent Babushka straight into the trees. She leapt up one branch and the next, quick as squirrel monkey boy ever could, then ran across the mid-canopy as if it were made entirely of her tight ropes. In a moment, she was gone, and the Hodag circled back around to the center of the camp, clawing and flexing as it went. Jenna heard the Hodag's raucous roar, interpreting it to mean that the creature had escaped. It was faint from where she was, but she hoped the Russians were too focused on the chase to notice. Then, from what couldn't have been very far in front of her, came an answer to her call. It was odd and chilling and made entirely of unnatural clicks. She guessed that most of the howl was frequency humans couldn't hear, or simply the weirdest cry ever. She headed in the direction of the sound, slightly changing her course to avoid the performers. She knew they would undoubtedly run towards this nearer call if they hadn't turned back to camp already. Jenna ran, looking around for a new path to strike, when her feet suddenly fell out from under her, and she tumbled to the ground. The wind was knocked out of her, and she rolled down an incline toward a ditch. Jenna tried to slow herself down, but didn't come to a stop until she had done a full rotation into the creek. Cursing under her breath, she squirmed up out of the shallow water and onto the muddy bank. Heart racing, Jenna first attempted to steady her breath. Between pants, she squeegeed the muck off her legs and arms and searched for scrapes. A long few minutes passed and she calmed herself, waiting out the Russians. It appeared they only had eyes for the Hodag, because in short time she watched them hop the creek right where it bent away from her vision. Second, she would have been outed. While waiting for the Russians to pass out of earshot, Jenna had plenty of time to sulk in the muddy wetness. When she could hear nothing but the trickling stream and birdsong, she picked herself up and headed back to camp, sneaking the first 100 yards, then sprinting the rest of the way. Meanwhile, the Hodag had stomped and strutted, declaring this territory its own and challenging anyone to try and recapture it. Watching the Hodag slink in and out of the smoke was as magnificent a scene as it was terrifying. Finally, Derek made his boldest move yet. He had met up with Sam and Mikey outside the Russians' camp and told them to run ahead and get ready. Now, and waited for the Hodag to circle back. It noticed him almost immediately. This was not the timid, bashful creature that Derek had heard stories about. This Hodag was pissed. He wasn't sure what the Russians had done to the thing other than lock it away, but the creature was not happy, and not about to be caged up again. He hissed at Derek, then charged. Derek ran along the inside of the clearing, then sprinted, baiting the Hodag after him. The Hodag was fast. The kids had briefly talked, however, and agreed it was a sprinter, not a marathon runner. If Derek could avoid getting caught in the initial chase, he could probably keep leading the thing for some time. Probably. It wasn't very far off when Derek darted into the woods, directly along the path where they had started. The Hodag was practically foaming at the mouth, gnashing its fangs and whipping its tail through swift breaking brush. After a long minute of chase, Derek turned to see if he had indeed gotten ahead of the Hodag. Almost too far ahead. He slowed slightly so as not to deter his pursuer. Once he figured out the Hodag's pace, he settled into the rhythm of it, heading directly for their trap. Not far from the snare, he chanced to glance backwards and nearly had his nose bitten off. Apparently, the critter had more than one burst of speed. Derek fell forward in surprise, placing his hand on the ground to stay upright while desperately pumping his legs to keep moving. It wasn't pretty, but the maneuver worked. He managed to get his feet back underneath him, and before long was in stride again. The Hodag stumbled on a root and yelped, sounding almost bleeding. Derek smiled in relief at the creature's mishap and turned forward, just in time to notice the patch of snow before him, and wait, snap! The snow, Derek realized too late, was actually a dusting of pure white bulldog hair. His foot had planted right in the middle of those clippings. Now the rope tugged away fast, cinching up around his calf as the momentum carried his leg deeper into the trap. The next moment played out in slow motion. Derek dug his free heel into the ground, trying to stop himself while kicking back the other foot in an attempt to exit the snare. He pulled his cottony up, trying to unthread his leg quickly as possible. The rope shrank tighter against his skin with every nanosecond. Derek just managed to get his heel out of the snare, but it gripped tight around his foot, yanking him even further off balance. He had been running forward, and in an instant was thrown sideways and upwards as the trap plucked him into the sky. Once he was full body length off the ground, a wiggle of his toes finally did the trick. His shoe rocketed into the air as he hovered momentarily, spinning all the while. He tucked himself as best he could, which saved his arm from whacking a nearby tree, but he spun even faster for it. 2 full rotations after his shoe left him, Derek hit the ground hard, stomach down. He didn't move. The Hodag, who stood stunned in the whole time Derek was flying, looked on from the background, entirely unsure of what had just happened. Mikey and Sam ran up with the net, and the Hodag snapped back to reality, having seen enough of humanity for one day. It whipped its tail once and turned, disappearing into the woods almost instantly. Not a moment later, Jenna emerged from off to the side. "Oh my gosh," she managed, through huffs in a tone of pure concern. Everyone jogged up to Derek and stood in silence. And if Sean's still there, I will popcorn this back to him and let him read the last couple of pages.
All right. We finish off on page 38. I couldn't quite hear the last bit of your talking.
Yeah, page 38.
Okay. Derek finally groaned. A collective sigh followed from everyone else. He slowly rolled onto his side and then his back. Mikey and Jenna helped him sit against the tree, where he collected himself for some time. Eventually, he looked at Jenna and whispered, "Did you lose the Russians?" "Duh, you idiot," she replied teasingly yet softly. "They're miles away by now." "Good," he coughed with a small nod. "You fall or something?" He motioned to her wet and muddied form. "All part of my master plan," she smiled. After a few minutes went by, Derek sipped at some water and did his best not to throw up. Eventually, he attempted to stand, nearly falling when he went to put his weight on his shoeless foot. Sam took a look, and though she wasn't an expert, said he'd probably sprained but not broken it. He stood again and managed a few steps. The rest of him was fine. All the wind was just knocked out of him. He rested a while longer while the other kids packed up the net and took down the snare. "Nice knot," Mikey told Sam when he found that the shoe was still dangling at the end of the rope. They had to untie it just to pull the shoe free. Maybe 2 nights, he amended, while struggling to loosen the bind. At last, everything was packed, and they all stood to leave. Mikey had made a walking stick for Derek. He had lost his original one at some point during the excitement, but was sure Derek needed this one more than he did. The sun was setting, and it was a long walk back. Derek made the walk longer for everyone, though he kept up pretty well. They trudged through forest, swampy meadow, poison ivy, more forest, thick brush, and finally made it to the creek, which, before today, had been the farthest they'd ever wandered into the woods. Following the creek a ways, they came to their log bridge and hopped across one by one. At last, it seemed that everyone could relax. "That was crazy," Mikey exclaimed as they made their way down the old familiar path. "So, Jenna, did you get to see the Hodag at all?" "Just a glimpse as it ran off." "They really are masters of camouflage. I definitely heard it, though. Oh, and another one was when I was leading the Russians astray. I hope they didn't catch that one, too." "If they did, it's not like they'll have any place to put it," Derek replied. "Their door got smashed to splinters, and it's pretty burnt, too. But you guys should have smelled the Hodag's breath. I got a good whiff when it chomped at me. It stank like hot diarrhea fire." "Ew," the others giggled. "I didn't really smell it, to be honest," Mikey shared. "But I guess I didn't get as close as you. Sam, do you still think those were primordial feathers or hairs?" "We never got a sample, but definitely primordial feathers. And from everything else, I'd say it has to be reptilian. I wonder if it burrows with those claws, or sinks to the bottom of a marsh to hibernate for winter." "So the real question is," Mikey began, "what are we going to tell everyone once we get back?" "That we saw a Hodag, of course," said Jenna with a wry smile. "And we nearly caught it too until Stuntman over here had to fall into our trap." "I didn't fall," Derek defended. "But you did fly," Jenna laughed. "That's twice today, including the bicycle launch. You must be training for the circus or something." "You were the one doing all the circus training," Sam told Jenna. "You were throwing those knives for like an hour. I think you bent my hammer on one of the top two." "Yeah, sorry about that," Jenna apologized. "Think your dad will notice?" "It's fine," Sam assured. "This one's mine anyway, and it's only a little messed up. Maybe when we tell the story, we should leave out the Russians, though. They kind of make the whole thing unbelievable." "The Russians are my favorite part," Mikey protested. "They were a lot of fun," Derek. "No one's actually going to believe that part. We gotta keep it simple. Basically, everything else is fine." "Yeah, I guess," Mikey conceded, clearly disappointed. "But maybe we can visit them again sometime," Jenna. "Too mad at us, right?" "No, they hate us," Mikey pouted, then thought again. There'd be more circus performers out there, right? Like from Norway or Baltimore or somewhere." "I don't know what people from Norway sound like," Sam admitted. "But yeah, I'm sure we'll find more circus performers again." At this, Mikey grinned ear to ear. They discussed all the details of how they found the Hodag, since they couldn't say it was last in a circus caravan, and quickly found themselves back at the picnic spot. It was as empty as when they had left it. They suspected it had been that way all day long, the only difference being that it was now well after dark. "How long do you think the streetlight's been on?" Sam asked, trying to peer down the road to where it met with a larger street. "At least 20 minutes now," Jenna answered. "Maybe longer." "Dang," Sam exhaled. I gotta jet back before my mom calls the cops." "Us too," said Mikey, as they went to grab their bikes. "We'll race you home, Derek." "Yeah, right. The only way you could ever..." "But I'm not gonna mess up any further." Fine. "I gotta get going too," Jenna added in. "Hope you don't get in too much trouble for your foot." "I think I can play it off for tonight," Derek answered confidently. "But who knows? Might be good as new by tomorrow." "Yeah," Jenna replied skeptically. "Good luck with that." The kids all slowly biked together to the end of the road. This was the dwindling ember of a once roaring adventure, and they all wanted it to last. At the streetlight, Jenna parted ways, but not the folds on her bike. Under the off-white bulb attracting bugs of every sort to its rays, the kids gave each other one last look before departing. They were exhausted, muddy, damp and sludgy, slightly burnt, spattered with scrapes and bruises, and they couldn't have been happier. This was a great Hodag hunt, Mikey declared.
Yay! I love it. That's such a fun story. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad you were able to join us today, Sean, and read some of it with us.
Yeah, this was fun. Despite a few technical difficulties, I had a great time.
Yeah. We're glad we were able to get it to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll be back with more Power of Storytime on Wednesday at noon. We'll be reading a little bit more from the passage at Moose Beach, and then next Friday at 5 we'll be reading again, and we'd love for you all to leave a comment and let us know what you'd like to hear more of. We can do another story from What Goes Unseen and Other Tales from Afar, or from any of the other books up here. And also, if you want to watch replays of this recording or of any of our story times, you can view them on our Facebook page, on Instagram TV, or on our YouTube channel. And we hope you'll join us next week for Power of Storytime.